Welcome to the Stradivari Code, your podcast about the fascinating world of string instruments. Today, I will take you on an exciting journey, stolen violins. Make yourself comfortable and let yourself drift. Sometimes a single name is enough to create entire worlds in the mind. Stradivari. For musicians, it is almost like a magic word. For collectors, it is a promise of history, perfection, and value. And for thieves? Well, for thieves, it is a temptation that some cannot resist. The very idea of an instrument that came from the workshop of the greatest violin maker of all time 300 years ago, played by kings and virtuosos, celebrated on stages around the world, brought to life by brilliant musicians. And today lying unnoticed in a humble case somewhere in the dark, far from the eyes of the world. That such things can happen, that these masterpieces disappear, is not a theory. It happens very rarely, but is a reality from time to time. And perhaps that is exactly the reason why these stories captivate us so much. They are like crime novels, but with a soul made of wood, lacquer, and sound. One of the most well-known stories, at least in the USA, is that of the Teutoburg Ames Stradivarius. Built in 1734, an instrument that takes our breath away when played. But it's not just the violin itself that makes this story so special, it's the connection to a particular family. Roman Teutoburg, a Polish-born violin virtuoso who made his career in America in the 1940s, bought this Stradivarius in 1943 for what was then $15,000. By today's standards, that may seem modest, but back then it was an astronomical sum. He played it, he lived with it, it was his artistic centerpiece. And then, in 1980, it disappeared. Not in the fog of a war, not in a distant city, but from his own world. For 35 years it remained missing. Imagine that. You know, a piece of your life is out there somewhere, you can feel it, but you're not allowed to touch it. It was only in 2015 that she returned, not to the Roman Teutoburg himself, he had been dead for 3 years by then, but to his 3 daughters. One of them is the well-known NPR reporter Nina Teutoburg, who made the return of this violin public. It was found by the ex-wife of the alleged thief. After his death, she discovered the instrument in his possession and, unaware of its true value, took it to a reputable violin shop to have it appraised. There they immediately recognized what a treasure was before them. Today it is back in use, lent to the young virtuoso Nathan Meltzer. And I think just the thought of it is comforting, that a violin that lay in the shadows for decades can once again sound soloistic. But not every Stradivarius meets such a good end. Some disappear forever, or at least for a human lifetime. It happened in 2014 in Milwaukee. Frank Almond, concertmaster of the Milwaukee Symphony Orchestra, is just finishing a concert. He is carrying the Lipinski Stradivarius from 1715 in a violin case. He is robbed in the parking lot. The attacker uses a stun gun and snatches the case. Within seconds, the violin is gone. The problem for the thief is that such instruments are practically unsellable. Anyone who could pay the price knows its origin, and thus also that it is stolen property. Still, it happens time and again that thieves are more driven by myth than market value. Fortunately, the Lipinski was found again after a week. Even more tragic is the case of the Davidoff Marini Stradivarius from 1727. Its owner, Erika Marini, was one of the most significant violinists of the 20th century. In 1995, at the age of 91, she was in hospital when someone broke into her New York apartment and S-tone violin, the Stradivarius, which her father had bought for her in 1924. She never learned what happened to it. She died without knowing where her beloved violin was. To this day, it remains missing. This list could go on, and it reads like a catalogue of temptation. The Oistrakh Stradivarius from 1761, stolen and recovered. The Colossus Stradivarius from 1716, missing since 1998. The Kokanski Stradivarius, stolen in 1987, returned in 1991. Some stories sound almost absurd, like the Duke of Alcantara Stradivarius, which supposedly fell from a car roof before reappearing decades later. But there is another category of losses, not through theft, but through life itself. Stradivarius destroyed in car accidents, instruments consumed by flames, the bombings of Dresden in 1945, which wiped out not only buildings, but also irreplaceable musical instruments. All these stories have one thing in common. They show how fragile even the most precious things are. A Stradivarius can survive centuries, wars, ocean crossings, changes of ownership, and yet it is vulnerable. And then there is the quiet, almost romantic possibility that some of these vanished violins are still somewhere and might reappear. Perhaps in a box in an attic, in a forgotten suitcase in the basement of an old villa. Perhaps someone inherited them and considers them worthless copies. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if one of these instruments turned up tomorrow. Would the world find out immediately? Would it be displayed in a museum showcase for the world, or return to a musician to sound as it did centuries ago? Maybe that is the magic of these stories. They connect art, crime, history, and hope. And as long as there is still an undiscovered Stradivarius somewhere sleeping, we will listen up when someone finds an old violin somewhere and it can be attributed to this venerable Italian master. That's it for today. Thank you for tuning in to the Stradivari Code again. Subscribe to our podcast, share it with others, and continue to join us on this acoustic journey into the fascinating world of string instruments. Stay interested. See you later.